Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. So, with that said, let's move on to Siri and your further explorations of Siri and Siri search.
So I've been
Search-like activity.
heads down into the new version of Siri, which is 18.1, and thinking a lot about it. And over the last week, there were several interesting announcements which have sort of solidified my thinking about it. One is the announcement from Mark Gurman, is that how you pronounce his name, of Bloomberg.
Gurman, yes.
That there's a Siri LLM coming, probably be announced in June at the Worldwide Developer Conference.
In an effort to make Siri more conversational, more like OpenAI.
Right. And, even in 18.1, it is currently vastly superior in that you now can type into it. One of the failings, besides the brittleness of voice historically and the inability to understand what people are saying and then translate it into an app because it was too structured, AI solving that problem. But the bigger issue is on Macs and on the phone, voice is not a natural input. It is a natural input in a car. It is a natural input when you're watching a TV with Apple TV. It is a natural input on a HomePod voice. And in those environments, Siri has historically worked quite well. It's in a phone context where it doesn't, or the Mac where you're at office, you can't really talk to, you don't feel comfortable talking to. So they've added a text input. So now the phone, which is naturally a touch, tap, and type interface, not a voice, and voice is sort of fourth in that.
I don't entirely agree with that, by the way, but keep going.
Well, it does impact it, and the same particularly on the Mac, it's true, which is not a voice input, right? There's no way you feel comfortable talking to your Mac. Even in my own office when I'm alone, I don't feel comfortable talking to my Mac. I feel totally comfortable talking to my watch, talking to my HomePod, talking to my TV. But if that makes anything clear, I'm an Apple homeboy. But I also own Apple stock just so I don't get in trouble with the FTC. But the point of all this is, as I'm seeing, Apple has developed, as I pointed out, I think last week, a number of their own knowledge graphs. They have a knowledge graph in news. They have a knowledge graph in sports. They have a knowledge graph in movies, TVs, music, classical music. And last week they announced classical music being brought into the Siri environment as a knowledge graph. And when you have knowledge graphs and you have AI, you can do the RAG, which is the ability to limit the generative output to a given set of data. And they have a maps database, a knowledge graph. And Apple is building those into Siri to answer questions on Siri in 18.1 with an iPhone 15 Pro or higher. Answer a lot of questions that are common high-level informational queries like, what's the weather? Who did St. Bonaventure beat last night? What was the score? What was the box score? All those sorts of questions.
And local stuff.
And local stuff. And interestingly, they figured out a way to pay for it. If you look at news, which is a great knowledge graph, Apple has figured out one of the problems with knowledge graphs is how do you keep them updated? They need to be self-generating to do that, right? When you rely on the business to keep a graph updated, it's hard.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't happen. With news, they've incentivized, they share the revenue for the subscription, so they have a subscription income, and they've just announced their own sales team to sell ads into newspapers when it shows on that newspaper.
Well, that's just a momentary digression on news. That's a great product if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, if you're not paying for it, it kind of sucks. It's not a great experience. But it's a great experience if you do subscribe, and it has become a really important source of traffic and revenue for these publishers, where Google has become less and less, and social media has become less and less.
Exactly. And so with these knowledge graphs, by answering these questions in all of these knowledge areas and having an income model, scraping all these high-level queries off the top, people are going to, as Siri rolls out and as Siri improves, and it's clear that Siri is now on an annual update cycle. It had been on a really lame or no update cycle for many years.
Yes.
We are seeing not just answering, but the ability to do things as well. One of the things that's coming out this month is app
events,
where Siri can go into an app and there's a schema and can cause things to happen. And we're seeing that in maps now. You can, I was riding my bike, asking for map directions to a restaurant, it said, here's one. Do you want it? Yes, no. I could shake my head, yes or no. I said no. The second one, yes. Shook my head, yes. It said to me, do you want me to call it or do you want driving directions? So it actually took an action based on the query and the context. And
Right.
so this isn't a search engine, but it's basically search becoming a feature.
It's
of
playing
the phone.
one on TV, essentially. I mean, it's acting like the use
solves
case
a lot
is
of the
similar.
same problems that a
Yes,
search engine
the use
solves.
case is very similar. So people don't care whether it's a search engine per se or something else, or we call it something else. It's delivering information that people want at the time they want it.
In an accurate way, brand consistently with Apple. So knowledge graphs, AI with Siri, income model, a way to deliver that to people in a useful way right at the front, like these panels, these little knowledge graphs lay over what you're doing when you type it in. So you can see the score, you can see the weather, you can see where your kids are located, you can see the map directions. All this stuff is right there. And to me, that is the Sherlocking of search, as it were.
So to what extent would you say that? I mean, this Siri is following a sort of a logical path that's partly dictated by the advent of LLMs and AI, right? And that user experience. So Siri is responding to that because if it didn't, it would essentially be dead, and it would be it would really
responding to that within the context of self-sustaining knowledge graphs.
Yes, but to what
income
extent
generating knowledge graphs?
To what extent, right? And ads is going to be maybe in there somewhere down the line. To what extent do you think that this trajectory of Siri and search-like experience is a response to what Apple anticipates is the end of its default search deal, $20 billion annually from Google? What do you think that's playing anywhere in this development?
Well, I mean, certainly nobody wants to give up $20 billion. Nobody I know, anyway. So there may be a Trappist monk somewhere that does. But as we know, these decisions are to force Google into it. Stop paying Apple is going to take a long time. I think that Apple, this whole project, as I analyze it with Siri, requires a replacement of phones, which is a 2-year cycle.
Right.
It requires training of the user, more improvement in Siri. So it's really a 4-year cycle, which correlates very well with the likely time frame for resolution of the Google paying Apple. So Apple will take the money as long as they can. I think they're leaving their options open. Mm-hmm. And I think that they have obviously a big strategy that makes them more independent of Google. They are executing it very well, very subtly, but very well. And so I think that they will leave the option open as long as they can to generate the income. But when it goes away, I don't see the income totally going away. I see Google as being the sole presence in that is going away. But they're opening up several new income opportunities in this. If you do a recipe search on the new Siri, you are presented with 3 videos and a YouTube. See this on YouTube. So nothing in the DOJ thing says YouTube can't buy a presence on the phone. Nothing says that Gemini, and we know that Apple's negotiating with Google to include Gemini, can't be paying to be on the phone. And if the DOJ stops Google from being the exclusive provider of search, the default, doesn't stop them and everybody else from bidding to be part of that. And so I think that there are income opportunities, not just in selling phones, selling subscriptions, selling ads, but in selling access to the phone, that Apple is going to be fine. So I have Apple stock. So don't take this with a grain of salt, but go buy Apple stock.
Yeah. Well,
thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.